Valentine's Day in Seoul was always the same at Daehan International High School. Pink balloons, chocolates in shiny wrappers, and couples posing under the cherry blossom trees for perfect Instagram shots. But for Chinaza Okafor, a quiet Nigerian transfer student, it was just another reminder that she didn't fit in. She sat by the window in her small rooftop apartment, scrolling through her phone. No notifications. No Happy Valentine's messages. Not even from classmates. It's fine, she whispered to herself. I'm used to it. Her only real friend, Jian Park, texted suddenly, Naza, I left my wallet at your place yesterday. Can you bring it to the Han River Park? Chinaza hesitated. She didn't want to face the streets filled with couples, but Jian had been there for her since she transferred. Throwing on her hoodie, she grabbed the wallet and stepped outside. Seoul was worse than she imagined. Everywhere she turned, couples were feeding each other tteokbokki, holding hands, snapping selfies. Under her breath, she muttered, I hope you all break up. She was crossing a pathway when a voice yelled, Move, blind girl! She froze. A tall boy in the Daehan basketball team jacket leapt over her effortlessly. Minjun Lee, the most popular boy in school. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that made half the school swoon. He didn't even glance back, just kept running. Welcome to Moonlit Stories, where moonlight meets myth. Love timeless tales, then hit like, subscribe, and join the circle. Every story begins with you. Chinaza blinked, her heart pounding, not from attraction, she told herself, but from shock. When she finally reached Jian, she handed over the wallet. Wow, you're glowing. Meeting someone. Chinaza teased. Please, Jian scoffed. Relationships are a waste of time. I'll never date. Across campus, Minjun was rejecting yet another box of chocolates. Girls crowded around him in the hallway, but his cold replies sent them away. Rumors painted him as arrogant, untouchable, a boy who thought no one was good enough. That afternoon, fate decided to play a cruel joke. Chinaza was delivering some club paperwork when she bumped into him, dropping a small package. He picked it up, assuming it was a gift. She crossed her arms. Excuse me, I don't give gifts. I can't even afford a decent lunch, let alone something for you. Just because you're tall, charismatic, and every girl dreams of you doesn't mean you're my type. Minjun raised an eyebrow but said nothing, walking away. That evening, her childhood friend Toby Adebayo, who also attended Daehan, texted, Naza, can you help me with a film shoot tomorrow? Only you can do this. Her roommate groaned. He's using you because you like him. Stop it. Toby's just my friend, Chinaza said, though her voice was unsure. The next day, she arrived at the filming site and froze. Minjun was there, leaning casually against the camera rig. Toby grinned. Oh, you two haven't met? Minjun's my teammate and roommate. Chinaza forced a smile. We've met. Briefly. Minjun smirked. Didn't hear a thing you said yesterday, by the way. She clenched her jaw. This was going to be a very long day. The filming location buzzed with activity, cameras on tripods, crew members adjusting lights, and students rehearsing their lines. Toby waved Chinaza over, his usual wide grin, making her forget for a second how awkward this was going to be. All right, Naza, he said, handing her a script. You're in the scene. She scanned the paper. Wait, you want me to be an extra riding a bike in the background? You dragged me out of bed for this. Toby shrugged. Even if I had 50 people, I'd still choose you. He walked off before she could argue. Minjun appeared, wheeling the bike toward her. Here! Try not to kill anyone. Chinaza shot him a glare. Relax. I've got this. She didn't. The moment the director called action, Chinaza wobbled like a baby deer. Her knees shook, the handlebars swerved, and before anyone could stop her, she swerved straight toward the lead actor. The boy jumped back just in time, but Chinaza crashed into a prop stand, sending fake cherry blossom petals raining down like a slow-motion disaster. The crew gasped. Minjun was the first to move, not toward her, but toward the actress who had squealed nearby. You okay? He asked the girl, brushing petals from her hair. Chinaza sat on the ground, stunned. I'm fine, she muttered to herself, though no one was listening. Toby rushed over, to the actress as well. Sorry, Sujin, we'll redo the shot. It was as if Chinaza had turned invisible. She picked herself up, dusted her jeans, and walked away before the embarrassment could choke her. Later that week, Chinaza applied for a part-time job at a cafe near Hongdae. The manager barely glanced at her resume before saying, "Sorry, not suitable." By the time she stepped outside, the February wind biting her cheeks, she felt like the universe was in on some cruel joke. Then, as if on cue, a man sprinted past, snatching her bag. "Hey!" she yelled, giving chase. But her foot caught on the curb, and she went down hard. She scrambled to pick up her scattered belongings, cracked phone, spilled wallet, when a shadow fell over her. "You're bleeding," said a familiar voice. She looked up. Minjun knelt beside her, holding out a clean handkerchief. "Let me see your hand." She hesitated. "What are you doing here?" "Following Toby. He's late to practice." "So you decided to play hero on the way," she muttered. Minjun ignored her tone, gently cleaning the scrape on her palm. "You should be more careful." By the time they reached her rooftop apartment, her stomach was growling. Minjun stopped at the door. "Eat something. And maybe lock the door this time." She wanted to thank him but couldn't bring herself to. The next morning at school, Toby mentioned casually, "We're going to the beach for a weekend trip. You should come, Naza." Before she could answer, Minjun's voice cut in from behind. "She's not even in our school club. Why's she coming?" Chinaza turned, her pride bristling. "Because I was invited, and whether you like it or not, I'm going." Minjun's eyes glinted. "Fine, but don't expect me to babysit you." Her jaw tightened. "Trust me, that's the last thing I'd expect." Saturday morning, Chinaza stood outside her building with her weekend bag slung over her shoulder. Toby's car pulled up, K-pop blasting from the speakers. Jiun sat in the passenger seat, already snapping selfies. "Hop in," Toby called. Chinaza slid into the back seat, only to realize Minjun was sitting beside her, earbuds in, staring out the window. Great. The ride to Incheon Beach was awkward. Toby and Jian sang loudly to every song, while Chinaza stared at the scenery passing by. Somewhere along the highway, her head started spinning. "You okay?" Toby asked from the front. She nodded, but the dizziness didn't stop. Minjun noticed and pulled one earbud out. Without a word, he handed her a bottle of water. "Thanks," she murmured. When they arrived, the group scattered to explore. Chinaza carried her bag toward the cabins, only to realize Minjun was following. "Our bags look the same," he said flatly. "Make sure you don't mix them up." She raised an eyebrow. "Relax, I'm not interested in your stuff." Hours later, the sun dipped lower, and the group gathered for a beach game. Chinaza tried to join, but her eyes wandered toward the shoreline where Toby and Jiun sat together, laughing at something only they understood. "You like him," Minjun said, stepping up beside her. She nearly dropped her drink. "What?" "Toby. You've been looking at him all day." She scoffed. "Not anymore. I've moved on." "Good," Minjun replied, kicking at the sand. "Don't waste your time on someone who won't notice." She turned to him. "Why do you care?" "I don't," he said, walking away. That night, after dinner, Chinaza wandered to the edge of the boardwalk. The sea breeze was cold, but the stars were clear above. She was half lost in thought when Minjun appeared with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Peace offering," he said, handing one to her. She smirked. "Is this your way of saying sorry for calling me useless during volleyball?" "You were terrible," he said bluntly, then softened. "But you tried." Before she could reply, Toby walked over, frowning. "What's going on here? Why are you two alone?" Chinaza rolled her eyes. "We're talking. That's it. Looks different from where I'm standing," Toby muttered. Minjun's jaw tightened. "What's your problem?" "My problem is you hanging around her like you." Toby stopped himself, shaking his head. "Forget it." Chinaza stepped between them. "You know what? I'm done. I'm going back to the cabin." The next morning, everyone was packing up when Chinaza realized she'd accidentally taken Minjun's bag. Inside was his basketball jersey, a notebook filled with neatly written physics notes, and a family photo. Minjun appeared in the doorway, looking for something. She quickly zipped the bag. "Yours." "I mixed them up." He took it, eyes unreadable. "Be more careful next time." As they left the beach, Chinaza couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them, something small but impossible to ignore. Seoul was back to its usual rhythm, crowded subways, the smell of roasting chestnuts on street corners, and the constant hum of traffic. But for Chinaza, the week after the beach trip felt heavier than usual. The tension between her, Minjun, and Toby lingered like smoke after a fire. Toby had been unusually distant, and Minjun, well, he still walked past her in the hallway like she didn't exist. On Thursday afternoon, Chinaza headed to her part-time cafe job near Hongdae. She needed the distraction and the money, but luck wasn't on her side. Her shift had barely ended when, walking through a side street, she heard quick footsteps behind her. Before she could turn, a man yanked her tote bag and sprinted away. "Yeah! Stop!" she shouted, running after him. But the thief darted into an alley. Chinaza chased for a few steps before tripping over a loose brick. Pain shot through her knee as she hit the pavement hard. Her phone clattered away, the screen flickering. She grabbed it and managed to dial Ji-eun, but the call went unanswered. Just as she was about to cry out in frustration, a familiar voice cut through the alley. "Chinaza!" She looked up to see Minjun jogging toward her, his school jacket hanging loosely off one shoulder. "What happened?" he asked, scanning her scraped knee. "Some guy in my bag," she stammered. Without a second thought, Minjun took off down the alley. Moments later, he returned with her tote in hand. "He dropped it when he saw me," he said, slightly out of breath. Chinaza blinked at him. "Why were you even here?" He shrugged. "Basketball practice ended early. I was cutting through the street." He crouched down, pulling a small first aid kit from his backpack. "Hold still. I can clean it at home," she protested. "Your definition of clean is wiping it with a tissue, right?" "Thought so." He dabbed the scrape gently, his touch careful despite his usual sharp tone. She watched him in silence, unsure what to make of this side of him, the one that didn't match the cold, untouchable Minjun everyone else saw. When he finished, he stood and offered his hand. "Come on, I'll walk you home." They reached her rooftop apartment just as the city lights began to glow. At the door, she hesitated. "Thanks for today," she said quietly. He gave a half-smile. "Just try not to make a habit of getting rescued." She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the small smile tugging at her lips. As he turned to leave, Toby's voice echoed from the stairs. "Minjun, what are you doing here?" "Making sure she got home safe," Minjun replied simply. Toby's jaw tightened. "You're spending a lot of time together lately." Minjun didn't answer, just met Toby's glare with a calm, steady look before walking away. Chinaza's heart pounded. She didn't know what worried her more, that Minjun had just stood up to Toby, or that she didn't mind it at all. The annual Daehan International High Charity Festival was a big deal. Food stalls, student performances, raffles, and a charity basketball match that always drew a crowd. Chinaza hadn't planned on going. She wasn't part of any club, and crowds weren't her thing. But Ji-eun barged into her apartment that morning, tossing a bright yellow volunteer shirt at her. "You're helping at the dessert stall," Ji-eun announced. "No arguments. We need more people." So, by noon, Chinaza was standing behind a table stacked with cupcakes, trying not to look bored. Across the courtyard, the basketball team warmed up, Minjun at the center of the group. His white jersey gleamed in the sunlight, and the girls in the audience were already screaming his name. "Popular guy," Ji-eun teased. "Still not your type." Chinaza scoffed. "Not even close." But her eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary. The first half of the match was intense. Minjun played with effortless precision, scoring again and again. Every time he landed a shot, the crowd erupted. During halftime, Toby came over to the dessert stall, grinning. "Naza, you should come watch from the court. Best seats in the house." Before she could answer, Minjun jogged over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Don't distract her. She's working." Toby raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you care what she's doing?" Minjun's jaw tightened, but he walked away without a word. Chinaza busied herself arranging cupcakes, pretending she hadn't heard the tension in his voice. Later, as the game entered its final minutes, disaster struck. A stray pass flew toward the dessert stall, knocking over the display stand. Cupcakes tumbled to the ground in slow motion. "Oh no," Ji-eun groaned. "We have to remake all of that." Before Chinaza could move, Minjun appeared beside her, grabbing a broom and helping sweep up the mess. "I'll cover the cost," he said quickly. You don't have to, she began. I want to, he said firmly, meeting her eyes for a second before turning back to the cupcakes. When the match ended, Minjun's team won. The crowd swarmed him, but instead of celebrating with his teammates, he made his way back to the stall. You hungry? He asked casually. She blinked. Why? There's still barbecue left from the food stand. Come on. They ended up sitting on the edge of the basketball court, sharing a paper plate of grilled beef skewers. You didn't have to skip celebrating for me, she said. I didn't skip anything, he replied, taking another bite. This is better. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. He smirked. And yet you're still here. For a moment, the noise of the festival faded, and it was just the two of them, the evening light casting a warm glow over the court. Somewhere deep down, Janaza knew something was shifting, slowly but surely, and the thought scared her more than she wanted to admit. Monday morning at Daehan International High started like any other, lockers slamming, chatter echoing through the hallways, and the smell of coffee drifting from the vending machines. But by the time Janaza reached her classroom, she could feel something was off. Conversations hushed when she walked past. A group of girls near the window giggled behind their hands, glancing at her. Ji-eun slid into the seat beside her. Okay, don't freak out, but there's a rumor going around. Janaza raised an eyebrow. What kind of rumor? That you and Minjun are dating. She choked on her water. What? That's ridiculous. Ji-eun shrugged. Apparently, someone saw you two sharing barbecue at the festival. You know how this school is, one photo, and the whole student body thinks you're engaged. Before Janaza could respond, the classroom door swung open. Minjun walked in, hands in his pockets, completely unfazed by the whispers that followed him. He met her gaze for half a second, then took his seat at the back. At lunch, the rumor had spread like wildfire. Students nudged each other as she passed, some smirking, others looking annoyed, mostly the girls who had been vying for Minjun's attention for years. She found Ji-eun in the cafeteria line. This is getting out of hand, Janaza muttered. You could just deny it, Ji-eun suggested, and make it look like I'm desperate to distance myself from him. No thanks. Before they could say more, a loud voice called from across the cafeteria. Hey, Minjun! It was Toby, carrying a tray of kimbap. Mind telling us if the rumor's true? The entire cafeteria went silent. Minjun glanced at Janaza, then back at Toby. Why do you care? Because she's my friend, Toby shot back. Janaza's heart pounded. She wanted to melt into the floor. Minjun stood, walked over to where she was standing, and without hesitation said, If people want to believe it, let them. I'm not explaining myself to anyone. Gasps erupted across the cafeteria. The rest of the day, Janaza couldn't focus. Every time she thought about how casually Minjun had brushed off the question, her chest felt tight. After school, she decided to take the long way home, hoping to avoid him. But halfway down the block, she heard footsteps behind her. You're avoiding me, Minjun said. She kept walking. I'm avoiding drama. You could have just said the rumor wasn't true. Would it have made a difference? Yes, she snapped. Now everyone's looking at me like I'm some competition they need to crush. He fell silent for a moment, then said quietly, I didn't deny it because I don't hate the idea. She froze. What? He stepped closer, his voice calm but certain. Let them talk. Doesn't matter to me, as long as you don't mind. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She didn't answer. She couldn't. As he walked away, Janaza realized the rumor might not be a rumor for much longer. The following week, Ms. Kong, their literature teacher, announced the midterm assignment, a 2-person project analyzing love stories from different cultures. Each pair would choose one and present it to the class. As names were called, Janaza prayed she'd be paired with Ji-eun. But fate had other plans. Janaza Okafor, Minjun Lee. The class erupted into muffled laughter and whispers. Ji-eun mouthed, Good luck, from across the room. That afternoon, they met in the school library. Minjun slouched in his chair, flipping through a textbook without looking at her. We should just get this over with, Janaza said, pulling out her notes. How about we compare Romeo and Juliet with? Boring, he cut in. Everyone will do that. She exhaled sharply. Fine. What do you suggest? He tapped his pen against the table. We could use that Nigerian folktale you mentioned once, the one about the girl who hides her royal identity. She blinked. You remember that? Yeah. It was interesting. For the next hour, they worked in unexpected harmony. Minjun's analytical mind broke down themes and symbols, while Chinaza explained cultural nuances. They argued over phrasing, teased each other over handwriting, but neither walked away. It was surprisingly easy. A sudden downpour trapped them in the library until closing. By the time they stepped outside, the school grounds were almost empty, rain tapping against the pavement. Chinaza pulled her hoodie up. I'll just take the bus. It's pouring, Minjun said. I'll walk you. You'll get soaked. Then we'll both get soaked. They walked side by side under the dim streetlights, their shoes splashing through puddles. Halfway to her apartment, the rain came down harder. Minjun suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her under the overhang of a closed cafe. Better? He asked, shaking rain from his hair. She nodded, shivering slightly. You could have just stayed in the library and leave you to walk home alone. Not happening. For a moment, they just stood there, the sound of rain filling the silence. His gaze lingered on her face a fraction too long. What? She asked, uncomfortable under the weight of it. He hesitated, then said, You're different when you're not trying to keep your guard up. Her breath caught. That's not a bad thing, right? He didn't answer, just stepped back as the rain began to ease. Come on. We've still got work to finish tomorrow. The next day, they met at Chinaza's rooftop apartment to rehearse their presentation. Ji-eun stopped by halfway through, clearly curious about the setup. You two actually look like you're getting along, she observed. We're just doing the project, Chinaza said quickly. But when Minjun left later that evening, he paused at the door. You did great today. Her stomach fluttered, and as she watched him disappear down the stairs, she wondered if the project was the only thing keeping them together, or if it was just an excuse neither of them wanted to end. The day of the midterm presentation arrived, and the school auditorium buzzed with chatter. Each pair had been given 10 minutes on stage, and Chinaza's nerves tightened with every passing second. Backstage, she flipped through her cue cards for the 100th time. What if I forget a line? She muttered. You won't, Minjun said calmly, leaning against the wall in his crisp white shirt and black slacks. And if you do, I'll cover for you. She looked up at him. Since when are you reassuring? Since you started shaking like you're about to face a firing squad, he replied, smirking. When their turn came, they stepped onto the stage. The spotlight was blinding, but Chinaza forced herself to focus on the audience, rows of classmates, teachers, and even the principal. Minjun opened with the introduction, his voice steady and confident. Then it was her turn to explain the Nigerian folktale. She spoke about the girl who hid her royal identity to live among ordinary people, and how love was tested by secrets and sacrifice. Halfway through her part, a loud whisper rose from the audience. Isn't that Minjun's girlfriend? No way. She's just using him for attention. The words sliced through her concentration. Her throat went dry, and her hands trembled. Minjun's eyes flicked toward her, reading the panic. Without missing a beat, he stepped forward, smoothly picking up her lines. But instead of sticking to the script, he added, This story matters because it shows that love isn't about status or looks. It's about seeing someone for who they are when no one else does. The room went silent. Chinaza blinked, realizing his gaze hadn't left her for the entire sentence. Her heart thudded in her chest. She found her voice again and finished the conclusion, her confidence returning. They bowed, and the applause that followed was loud, louder than she expected. Backstage, she exhaled heavily. You didn't have to improvise like that. Yes, I did, he said, pulling a bottle of water from his bag and handing it to her. You were about to freeze. She hesitated, then asked, Was that line about me? He didn't answer directly, just shrugged with a faint smile. If it was, would you be mad? Before she could respond, Toby appeared, clapping Minjun on the shoulder. Nice work, man. But I didn't know you were such a poet. Minjun's smile faded slightly. Guess there's a lot you don't know. The tension between the two boys was subtle but unmistakable. That evening, Chinaza sat on her rooftop, replaying the moment on stage in her mind. She hadn't imagined it. There had been something in Minjun's voice, something that made it hard to breathe. When her phone buzzed, it was a message from him. Good job today. You made the story unforgettable. She typed a reply, deleted it, and typed again before finally sending. Thanks, and so did you. For the first time, she let herself wonder, maybe the rumor wasn't a rumor anymore. The week after the presentation, Daehan International buzzed with talk of the folktale couple. Some students praised Chinaza and Minjun's performance, but others twisted it into gossip. It all came to a head on Wednesday when Chinaza walked into the cafeteria and found a small group of girls blocking her path. Their leader, Yoonji, folded her arms. So, you think you're special just because Minjun defended you on stage, she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Chinaza's pulse quickened. I don't have time for this. Yoonji smirked. Right. But you have time to follow him around like a puppy. Everyone knows you're just trying to trap him. Before Chinaza could reply, a shadow fell over them. Minjun stepped between her and the girls, his eyes cold. Get out of her way, he said flatly. Yoonji scoffed. You're really going to take her side over your own classmates? Yes, Minjun said without hesitation. The cafeteria went quiet. The girls exchanged looks, then stalked off, muttering under their breath. Chinaza stared at him. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, he interrupted. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone. She swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. The whole exchange had been intense. Later that day, during free period, Toby found her by the vending machines. You know this is getting out of control, right? He said. Half the school thinks you're dating him, and the other half wants to make your life miserable. She crossed her arms. And what do you think? I think you're playing with fire, Toby said quietly. Minjun doesn't open up to people easily. If you hurt him, she cut him off. Since when do you care about protecting him? His jaw tightened. Since I noticed you matter to him. Before she could process that, Minjun appeared, handing her a packet of honey butter chips. You skipped lunch, he said simply. Toby gave Minjun a hard look. Don't get too comfortable. Things change fast around here. Minjun met his gaze without flinching. Not for me. That evening, Chinaza found herself pacing in her room. The day's events played over in her mind. Minjun stepping in at the cafeteria. Toby's warning. The way Minjun seemed so sure when he said things didn't change for him. Her phone buzzed. A message from Minjun. You free? Meet me on the rooftop. She hesitated, then went. The night air was cool, the Seoul skyline glittering in the distance. Minjun was leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets. I wanted to make something clear, he said. What I said today. I meant it. I don't care what people think. I'm on your side. Her chest tightened. Even if it makes things harder for you. Especially then, he said, his voice steady. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights stretched endlessly around them, but it felt like the rooftop was the only place in the world. And for the first time, Chinaza wondered if she was ready to stop pretending there was nothing between them. Spring arrived early in Seoul, painting the city in soft pinks and whites. Daehan International's annual school trip to Nami Island had everyone buzzing. A day of hiking trails, riverside picnics, and cherry blossom paths. Chinaza sat near the back of the bus, her sketchbook balanced on her lap. Ji-eun leaned over. So, is this going to be your chance? My chance for what? Chinaza asked, feigning ignorance. To finally admit you like Minjun. Please, the whole school already knows. Before Chinaza could reply, Minjun climbed aboard, his bag slung over one shoulder. He scanned the bus, saw her, and walked straight to the empty seat beside her. Morning, he said casually. Her heart did a ridiculous little flip. Morning. The day unfolded like a montage, students racing each other down forest trails, sharing kimbap under blooming trees, taking group photos by the riverside. Minjun stuck close, sometimes teasing her, sometimes just walking quietly beside her. During a break, Toby approached, holding a camera. Hey, Naza, come take a picture with me. She hesitated. Minjun stepped forward, his tone calm but unmistakable. She's with me right now. Toby's eyebrows rose, but he just nodded and walked away. Later, as the group explored a quiet part of the island, Chinaza wandered ahead, sketchbook in hand. She stopped under a massive cherry blossom tree, the petals falling like snow. Minjun caught up to her. You really like drawing, huh? It helps me remember things, she said softly. Some moments you want to keep forever. He watched her for a moment. And what about this one? She looked up. What about it? This feels like one of those moments. Her breath caught. The air between them felt charged, the noise of the rest of the group far away. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the teachers gave everyone free time before boarding the bus. Chinaza walked alone to the small wooden pier, the lake reflecting the fading light. She didn't hear him approach, but she knew it was him when a warm jacket draped over her shoulders. You'll catch a cold, Minjun said. Thanks, she murmured. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. I've been thinking about something. You can tell me if it's stupid. She smiled faintly. Go on. I don't want to keep wondering if you feel the same way. I like you, Chinaza. I've liked you for a while, and I'm done pretending I don't. Her heart pounded. The words she'd been holding back for weeks suddenly felt too heavy to keep in. I like you too, she admitted, even when you were cold and annoying. He chuckled. Guess I'm lucky you gave me a chance. As the last light faded, Minjun reached for her hand. She let him. The rest of the world could think what it wanted. This moment was theirs. On the bus ride back to Seoul, Ji-eun smirked knowingly from across the aisle, but Chinaza didn't care. For the first time, she didn't feel invisible. And she knew this was just the beginning.